options as you go.
You can rotate the board, so you can choose a different path if you're like, I want to do more strength-based things, or I want these particular boons or glyphs. You can chart your path through it, and they're really a way for you to keep expanding your character and making it uniquely yours.
Similar to the Paragon boards is the Codex of Power. It's an in-game system that holds the aspects related to the character. You are able to complete a dungeon, and they will have a chance to drop an aspect that you can pick up.
And what this allows players to do is take items they're finding in the world and make them more powerful, turn them into legendary items.
It's really special to discover what kind of playstyle really means the most to you. Every part of Sanctuary is fulfilling and satisfying. Dungeons in particular are really close to my heart. Nightmare dungeons are going to give the players the opportunity to experience a dungeon that they might have already experienced in their past playthroughs. They'll enter the dungeon with a found sigil that alters the playstyle and the intensity of the dungeon.
They're more difficult, and they have additional objectives, and then they also have affixes, which add a degree of difficulty for you and your group to work through.
One of my favorite affixes that you can find in Nightmare Dungeons is actually called Hellgate. Occasionally, these portals will open up throughout the area that will just pour out different monsters that aren't native to that region for you to also be dealing with while you're trying to handle everything else inside the dungeon. There's over 120 dungeons to play through and find in Diablo IV, and any one of them can become a Nightmare Dungeon by finding a Nightmare Sigil and then using it to activate the Nightmare version of that dungeon space.
Everything's a little darker, everything's more difficult. It's going to add a little bit of a twist of flavor on your particular dungeon.
There's some targeted activities in Diablo IV that suit what you're feeling in the mood for.
The Forces of Hell are starting to have more influence in certain parts of Sanctuary in the vast interconnected overworld of the experience. And as the players are going into Helltide areas, you're gonna find even more powerful monsters. And by killing them, they'll be able to gain the
Om det är Zelda, det kan man tro. Inget ljud hade ni heller. Så här, ni missade min helt fantastiska presentation. Nej, det gjorde den inte. Men god kväll allihopa. Tjena FF Gaming, tjena Mr. PG, Arivian, Lancelot, Magnus, Axt, som precis skulle börja Wartaila. Gör det lite vid sidan av, vet jag. Julia, Lancelot har jag sagt redan, Idon, Pierre, Jinx. Ni behöver inte vara oroliga. Det blir både lite Diablo-kväll och lite Dead Island 2-kväll. Jag hoppas det låter bra för alla. Jag har kastat mig in i detta och försökt förbereda att vi ska kunna göra båda två så gott som möjligt ikväll. Har ni önskemål, klagomål, drömmar, hojtar det till. Division får stryka med för de två andra, faktiskt. Jag hoppas inte det kommer göra er olyckliga. Är det bra med alla? Är ni redo för en sån här crazy specialstream som vi kör idag? Två minuter in i spelet. Vad ska din häst heta? Eller vad heter din första häst? Jag antar att du redan har döpt den då. Jag gör lite teknikfixning här i bakgrunden som man kan. Medan vi har vidare Jack Silver. Trött som bara den, säger Mr. PJ. Jag tror också det blir en väldigt kul kväll. Och jag tror det börjar snart. Jag kommer kommentera lite i lugn och ro. Vi ser, men nu drar vi igång så nu ska vi lyssna här.
Developer livestream update. I'll be your co-host. I'm a YouTube content creator and professional Diablo fan. And I want to thank the Diablo team for having me here today. We're going to be diving into some juicy topics, and we have with us some folks who'll take us through those, we have with us...
Hi, I'm Joe Shelley. I'm the game director for Diablo IV. And for folks watching us here and keeping an eye on chat, please keep an eye on the cameras. If they start spinning end over end, you know we had a bad problem and we're not going to space today.
Fair. Okay, I'm Joseph Pipora. I'm the associate game director for Diablo IV.
And I'm Adam Fletcher. I'm the associate director of community for the Diablo franchise. So we have a lot to talk about today. We have Riker here. Thank you again, Riker, for joining us to be our host for this actual live stream itself. And we did want to actually do a few quick agenda items and so forth beforehand. Just a reminder to everyone that Diablo 4 obviously is coming out in June, and you can still pre-order.
Yeah.
We do have
De börjar med att berätta att vi gärna får beställa spelet om vi inte har gjort det. God kväll alla som droppar in nu.
Ultimate versions actually give you early access, so there should be a QR code on screen if you want to pre-order for deluxe or ultimate versions of the game. Today, though, we have a ton to talk about. We expect this stream to be about 90 minutes or so because we want to cover a lot of different topics, one being endgame, the other one being some class balance changes in regards to some of the beta feedback that we ended up receiving, as well as the dungeon feedback that we also received during our beta learnings that we actually posted last week. So without further ado, I'm going to stay quiet for most of the stream. You'll see me more towards the end. But I will pass it off to Riker to kind of start.
I'll be on Twitter the whole time. He's very busy.
Yes, I'm looking at chat.
Yeah.
Yes, I'll be looking at chat because we will be doing Q&A afterwards.
True.
But I will pass it off to Riker because obviously, Riker, you've had quite a journey in getting down here. And of course, over the past week, you've been able to play the latest builds of Diablo 4. And
Orättvist.
Here, like, how was it?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. So I've been waiting for Diablo 4 since years before it was ever revealed. I've been waiting so long, I'm literally transforming into Deckard Cain. I mean, look at me. So yeah, when you reached out for the chance to come to the offices, play the latest build, then getting to come here, getting to experience it, getting to talk to some awesome people who gave me awesome insight into the build, into the systems, and get to play with decked out characters, endgame builds, seeing all the synergies coming together with the items, the Paragon boards and everything. It's really been a blast.
Awesome. Good to hear. I know one of the first topics that we wanted to jump into was, I believe it was talking a little bit more about the world tiers and the capstone dungeons, I believe.
Yeah, because that's basically the gateway into all the other topics, right? Because we have the world tier system is like the different difficulties, and the capstone dungeons is how you unlock those and then get access to all that end game stuff. So I think we have some footage to show while Joe, you want to talk us?
Yeah, let's talk about this. So yeah, I guess the first thing we want to talk about here is when players are going through the base game experience, they're finishing the campaign, they reach level 50, they get to move into their first world tier content, which is the nightmare tier.
Äntligen får vi höra lite om det faktiska spelet.
What we call one of our end cap dungeons. These are longer and more challenging dungeon spaces that have big boss encounters mixed throughout. They kind of serve as like milestones where players are expected to pass in order to gain access to that next world tier. Now, Riker, when you were playing, you had a chance to actually check out your first NCAP dungeon, or at least as part of this test. Like, what was your experience playing through this?
Yeah, so the first NCAP dungeon, all right. I was one of those guys who was saying veteran difficulty is too easy, crank it up. So NCAP dungeon, I think the first one, it's recommended level 50. I was level 45, thought I was a hotshot, went in there. It was a humbling experience. That's how I discovered that.
Kul, för det är någonting som jag också klagade på under tiden när vi streamade betan. Det kändes för lätt till och med på de svåra svårighetsgraderna. Så kul att det händer någonting i endgame i vart fall.
Between my legs, go power up a bit more before trying it again, but then conquering it felt like a really great achievement. Very satisfying.
Yeah, these aren't really spaces we expect players to want to go and try to farm and try to get a lot of things out of. It's more, these are milestones, gates for players to pass in order to gain access to that nightmare tier. Once the players actually get into this next world tier 3, they're going to get access to a few new features. We're going to talk about a number of them today. So you'll start to see that areas of the world are going to be affected by the Helltide system. You're going to get access to nightmare dungeons. You're going to start to see unique items begin to drop in different parts of the game. And then you're going to start to see sacred and ancestral items also begin to appear in World Tiers 3, and then particularly in 4. And also, in addition to those things, the world, of course, is becoming more dangerous as the players step into Nightmare and Torment tiers, World Tiers 3 and 4 respectively. Monsters can do more damage, They are going to be more aggressive. There's a number of changes. Joe, do you have any thoughts on like the...
Kul att man kommer bli belönad för de högre svårighetsgraderna, så det är inte bara en utmaning utan det blir faktiskt lite coolare gear och så vidare man kan få tag på.
Is that you've got this the general gameplay loop of getting more powerful, optimizing your build, getting more gear, and then you have something that you're testing yourself against. And then when you defeat that, you move into this entirely new world tier with all of the additional like systems and mechanics and features that unlock. So you're really moving into a place where new stuff is happening. You're unlocking new cool stuff.
Yeah, enemies are more aggressive, they're more accurate, they're faster, they're moving more quickly. You start to deal with champion creatures, which are just more powerful minions that can show up in your elites and be affected in certain ways.
That's right. Like the monsters have certain cooldowns between their attacks. They have logic for how they do targeting. They have projectiles. Some projectiles have seeking.
True. Yeah.
So they can home to some extent. And they have some logic about how they group up and how they decide which people to target. And so a lot of those different parameters we adjust as you go up in world tiers to make the monsters more threatening. Because of course...
Vad säger ni om detta, mina vänner? Inte bara att det liksom blir svårare med hur mycket stryk man tar, men att de påstår att monsterna ska bli klokare. På något sätt så AI:n som styr varje karaktär eller varje fiende ska liksom vara vassare. Kul koncept om det funkar, säger jag.
Deal or increase the amount of hit points they have as you're going through these encounters, but we wanted to make sure that the world felt more dangerous as you progress into these higher world tiers, and that requires more work when working with monsters and those various encounters to kind of like create that extra level of challenge. Did you kind of determine and sense anything like kind of going from world tiers like 1 and 2 into like world tiers 3 or 4?
Oh, I definitely felt it. You stated in the difficulty descriptions. I guess I just glossed over it, and I just expected more damage, more health. Yeah, I know how difficulty works. But I started to feel, the world just seems more hostile, more aggressive. And that's when I realized, there's a lot more at play in the increased difficulty here than just bigger numbers, which is nice.
There's one more thing I want to talk about with regards to world tiers as well. And this is I'm very excited about this talk in general. I've been waiting to have a lot of these conversations and with the audience, they can kind of convey some of the more interesting depth and complexities associated with some of the systems.
Välkomna alla som droppar in. Vi börjar med lite Diablo 4 show ikväll och sen kommer vi känna på Dead Island 2.
You gain access to sacred items that may appear for you. And then World Tier 4 you gain access to ancestral items that could be to drop for players as they're going through those spaces. Now with the players leveling up from 1 to 50, the items that you're getting from monsters that you're killing are going to be the power is going to be based on their strength and level. So if you are, you're playing in the beta and you're killing level, 35 monsters for whatever reason, and you're going to be getting slightly more powerful gear as a result of that because the monsters are more challenging and they're going to be dropping better gear for you. But once you have reached level 50, and that basically that flow means that as you're leveling up and you're fighting more challenging things, you're going to continue to like slowly upgrade all of your gear over time. You'll find a ring here and a helmet there, a pair of gloves. That's great. That's how we want you to kind of like get exposed to itemization systems as you're progressing through initially in the game. But once you get into World Tier 3, things change a little bit. So items that drop you have a chance to be sacred. Not every item in World Tier 3 is sacred by default. The higher the level of the creature that you're fighting, the more likely the chances that items that drop from that creature will be sacred in nature, or also based on the kind of content you're completing. But sacred items, when they drop, they drop at a very large range in terms of the power that they can have. So you could get into World Tier 3, you could kill a pack of elites in your first dungeon in World Tier 3 at level 50. And you can get an item out of that group. Maybe it's a rare item that drops up in that group that is powerful enough that could serve a level 70 character. So the sacred item tier basically is going to have gear in it that goes from level 50 all the way up to level 70 in terms of like the power swing there. Once you get a little bit higher, it's a little more likely to get slightly higher in the range, but it's very likely you can get those.
Hittills tycker jag det låter ändå som ett välgenomtänkt endgame. Det känns som att det kommer att finnas mycket här att vi bara skrapar på ytan. Kul om det är så.
Might show up at level 51, and that might be the one that you want to hold on to for the entirety of that tier.
And you're talking about when you're talking about these sacred items, the level requirement for this ring, for example, is not 70, right?
No. So the level, that's a great point, Joe. So the level requirement for this is actually to be set at the level at which you actually loot the item. So once again, we have trading in the game. If you are level 50 and you get a really, really great range rep, that's going to be good for not quite your build, but like maybe you're playing a bleed barbarian. This is really, really good for like a berserk build or like a big fury build. And you say, okay, I want to give this to you can hold on to it. That could be a really valuable item to trade because it could be that its eye power is such that it's like really good for a level 70 character, but the required level for the ring itself is level 50 because you got it at level 50. And that's going to raise with the course of time. We think that's going to be super fun for players to chase. And there's more of that as you get into the ancestral tier, but that's not all. I think the next thing we're talking about is actually legendary.
Kul att man kan råka plocka upp väldigt kraftfulla grejer i förväg. Och sen bara liksom vara sugen på att snart kommer jag få använda det.
I really want to focus on things that we haven't spent a ton of time discussing, but to give a general overview, legendary items in general are attached to like legendary powers. And these legendary powers, or reverse, legendary powers attached to legendary items. Legendary powers basically are designed to appear on multiple different slots. So, an aspect might appear on an amulet, but it might also appear on gloves, or it might appear on ring, or it might also appear on weapons. These things have a tendency to be in a lot of different places based on the power itself. And we like this because it lets players like extract aspects and powers from items and put them into other items that meet these certain criteria. It's fun because we want players to go and be chasing certain fantasies. It helps them kind of like hone in on certain kinds of builds and gets them excited about the potential of like kind of taking all these different Legos and kind of putting them together. Can I say Legos on stream?
Yes. Legendaries, yeah.
Legendaries is what I'm talking about. So,
Legendaries.
You get all these legendaries together, and you put them together. That's gonna be really, really fun. So that's part of the fantasy we think of legendary items. Did you actually get a chance when you're going through 1 to 50? There's only a certain number of these that are actually available. But when you get into World Tiers 3 and 4, more legendary powers are available. Did you get a chance to see any like new legendary powers as you were playing?
Oh yeah, I mean I definitely got to see a variety of legendary powers. I got a certain number of drops. Drop rates didn't feel out of control, but you guys gave me some pre-made characters as well that were decked out with builds, and I saw lots of cool synergistic powers that came together to really...
Ja, hittills så är det ju en rätt så seg stream, nästan paketerad som en podcast. De har sagt en del intressanta och kul saker tycker jag. Men tempot kunde varit lite högre och hur man paketerar och presenterar kunde ha varit betydligt bättre, även om det är en dev-stream. Eller vad säger ni?
Only begin to appear when players enter the nightmare tier. So once you're in World Tier 3, there's a low chance that some of the game's unique items will begin to appear for players as they're progressing through this experience. And they're very, very rare. These are huge chase items and opportunities here. Some of them are really important for build making. Some open up a whole different build paths and opportunities for players to go and pursue. These are things that are designed to be really exciting, like what you suggest there when you have that experience trying to gather the werewolf. The ability to stay in werewolf form effectively forever with that druid unique. Really, really cool stuff. And there's more of these unlock over the course of your level progression as well.
I think I saw Shaco earlier there in the list of unique items.
That's correct. Shaco does make a return, and there's lots of opportunities for us to basically kind of pay homage to items that came in previous versions of Diablo, previous entries in the series. You'll see a number of different items make returns. Items like Grandfather, Shaco, obviously. You'll see a few familiar, and then a few familiar favorites, and then more over the course of the game's live development.
Also, this is a good way for people to kind of see the new font changes and so forth that based off the beta learnings that we actually ended up posting last week.
Yeah, we'll get more into the beta learnings later in the live stream. We'll go over them in a lot more depth. But yeah, absolutely, the font was a great example. I mean, I think we added at least 20% more serifs to the
more serifs.
Significantly more serif, yeah.
But no, seriously, people pointed out that the font, while highly readable, and we spent a lot of time thinking about how the game is going to display on all kinds of different screens, different aspect ratios, TVs, right? And so we want the
Hur viktigt är typsnittet för er så länge ni kan läsa?
But it didn't feel as much like Diablo as it could have, and so we went back and looked for a font that was still highly readable but had more of a Diablo thing. And it's just a great example of players pointing something out and us being able to react to it.
What's the next thing we want to talk about, Riker? What do you think?
Well, so we have all these legendary items. One semi-deterministic way to farm for them, Helltide. It's an activity where, well, I guess you can dive into how exactly you can target farm specific item slots to hunt for specific unique items. And it's going to be one of the main endgame activities that we'll be partaking in, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned before, once the player gains access to Nightmare Torment here, they are going to, or Nightmare tier, they're going to start gaining, they're going to start seeing some of these new activities. One of them, which is Helltide. Helltide is basically going to be the situation where you're running in through the world of Sanctuary.
Det här låter spännande.
Red, blood begins to fall from the sky. New monsters begin to appear. Everything is more challenging. New events are going to start showing up, and importantly, as you're killing creatures when you're within one of these Helltide areas, you're going to be getting what we call cinders. It's this new currency players be able to collect while they're specifically within these spaces. And this is great because you get to take these cinders, and as you're wandering through the overworld, you might be running near other players. You might be helping them do events together. Everyone's getting their own cinders as they go. You'll be looking for these Helltide caches you can see here. And these are great to your point about being able to target farm for certain kinds of items. So every one of the caches in the Helltide zone is actually tied to an item slot. And they all have different costs. So you'll be gathering cinders by playing within this space, trying to locate one of the caches that have the item type that you're looking for. Whether maybe you're looking for an amulet or looking for a ring. Maybe you're looking for a Shaco. So you're looking actually to go find a helmet cache and want to keep trying to go after the helmet cache and the rare, desperate hope that you're going to get exactly the unique item that you're looking for, right? That's cool. We want to give you some of that opportunity, to target farm a little bit. But there's actually a little bit of fun there too. So one of the things that's one of my personal favorite parts of the Helltide system is the idea that the players there's an extra set of stakes, right? When the players running around these cinders, they have the chance if they die, they're going to lose about half of their cinders every time they fall. And they don't drop on the ground; they're gone. So you have to be very careful about when you're looking to overextend as part of the combat experience in order to farm more cinders.
Straffad av girighet om det går fel. Vad säger vi om detta, mina vänner?
Putting yourself at more risk, the more you try to gather, and the greedier you get, the more likely it is that you're going to lose things.
That's right, and there's a time limit on Helltide too, right?
That's right. Helltide is only active, the Force of Hell only arrive for about an hour during when they are actually active. And different areas of Sanctuary are picked for Helltide zone each time it rotates and moves around. So you need to make good use of your power. And if you leave a Helltide zone, those cinders are gone. You have to spend them. So if you see that the clock is ticking down, you're getting 5 or 4 or 3 minutes away from the end of the Helltide, you got to find yourself a cache to kind of deposit those things.
Yeah, absolutely. My experience, I first jumped into a Helltide event with, I think, 20 minutes
left. Med saker som går på tid där även bara valutan är värd under en viss tid. Spelare kan inte hamstra. Det där gillar jag.
To see, okay, which is the one that has the slot that I'm looking for, what are the different costs, and then I'm doing some quick math. Okay, I'm gathering cinders at about this rate per minute. I have this many minutes left. Okay, I think I could afford the most expensive, the weapon slot, and I got to backtrack to that place in order to get there. And then I died. And I'm like, okay. Recalculating.
Yeah.
Okay, how much time do I have left now? Okay, so quickly. Yeah. And then I died again. And better luck next time. Another hour before the next one comes around. I'll have a better plan this time.
Now, granted, you can still get legendary items dropped for you. You can still get really good drops inside Helltide experiences while you're killing monsters. So it's not like if you lose those cinders, you've lost all opportunities for rewards. Yeah. But obviously, it does take a little wind out of your sails if you just happen to get jumped at the wrong time. Again, another great opportunity for there to be players nearby when they're trying to help out in those situations.
Yeah, one of the things I think is really cool about this is that these chests or caches, boxes with awesome loot inside, right? They, each time a Helltide appears, they're in different locations,
right?
So you have to go and find them, as Riker was saying. But for the duration of that Helltide.
Kul. Allting som bjuder in till att man ska leta eller söka eller sådär utforska världen tycker jag är positivt i den här typen av spel.
Where the caches are for the item spots that you're interested in. And then you can, mentally remember, okay, here, I want to farm around here. I'm going to come back here. I'm going to get this item or whatever. And one thing I want to call out here, you saw one of the caches on the screen earlier, in some of our video that we captured for it. Now we did capture that with the UI off, so you can't see the icon above it, but there is an icon that says, in here there are boots.
That's correct.
So you will know before you open that cache what's in it.
And I mean, that's not all. I mean, there's other risks and dangers inherent in Helltide areas. This is an opportunity for you to fight some different bosses. Again, like I mentioned before, there are different events and things that actually are going to be showing up. And of course, we can't really have such a wonderful experience as Helltide without our baby boy, the Butcher, showing up occasionally and causing serious mayhem and mischief in the overworld of Sanctuary. So lots of really fun things happen inside these Helltide areas over the course of the player's experience.
And it's also an opportunity to farm a special crafting material, right?
Jag tycker Helltide låter kul. Vad säger ni?
Like fiend bros and things really are coming directly from Helltide encounters and those experiences. So you are looking to also get some of the materials you need for like really high tier like weapon and item upgrades from going through these places.
So Helltide is what we're doing to farm crafting materials in order to target farm specific drops. Another big activity that we're going to be doing, Nightmare Dungeons. You want to talk a bit about that?
Yeah. So yeah, Joe, do you have anything you want to talk about for Nightmare Dungeons first?
You know, Nightmare Dungeons are, we're going to talk again. We're going to talk about beta feedback at the end of the show here, or near the end of the show. But Nightmare Dungeons are our key dungeon replayability system for the later part of the game, right? And you're going to get sigils, and Joe's going to talk a little bit about the sigils, but we're really excited for players to get to check out all of the cool ways that the dungeons can really be transformed by the Nightmare Dungeon system.
Yeah, so first up, Nightmare Dungeons, very, very exciting system. Players haven't had a chance to play these in our betas yet, but as they get into the end game content, start going through World Tiers 3 and 4, you'll begin to see, you'll gain access to some of your first sigils, which are primarily initially earned by completing Whispers of the Dead, one of our other overworld content features that players will be able to engage with. Now, sigils are really interesting in that they are tied to a level when you find them, which is going to affect the level of the monsters inside that space. They have various afflictions, which we've talked a little bit about in streams in the past. These are going to modify the way that level rolls out. But Nightmare Sigils, when they are activated, after you collect one, is going to basically open up a portal near an existing side dungeon. And in the pre-release version of Diablo IV and additional seasons, we basically select a subset of all of the side dungeons of the game that can become Nightmare Dungeons for that period. So players become more familiar with a set number of these because they know that they can be populated with these Nightmare Dungeon experiences. So you might already know, and exclaim or whatever it is, what the layout of a given dungeon might look like normally. But Nightmare Sigil is going to change that by introducing these new afflictions and then also these greater afflictions. We showed earlier in the video like this. Right now, actually, we're looking at this hell portal, nightmare portal that can open up and basically spawn in all of these monsters from other like monster families that might not be native to that dungeon, which is pretty cool. In that we like the idea that players are going to have to kind of deal with these new different threats than what they're typically used to as part of that encounter. And there's a number of these other like greater afflictions, like we showed the Stormbane's Wrath, that disc thing that was floating around around you, and occasionally it just pulses out this really big, stunning, damaging effect. So you have to be mindful of where it is. You should make sure you avoid it as part of the combat experience. Definitely adds a new wrinkle to gameplay as you're going through. And we add more of these afflictions as the player continues to level up and they get to go deeper and deeper into the Nightmare Sigil system, unlocking higher level sigils and dealing with like more and more dangerous threats over the course of time. And this is a really great place, not only just to like earn experience and really push your build and make sure that you're strong enough to tackle these sorts of challenges, but you'll also be able to. These are really great places to farm for like sacred and ancestral items in particular, and these are the places that you're going to be upgrading your Paragon glyphs.
Det är mycket information om små detaljer i rätt fort tempo. De ger inte så mycket utrymme för mig att kommentera, men jag försöker liksom sno lite tid här och var när jag kan. Ja, jag ska spela Dead Island 2 ikväll. Mina kära vänner, vet ni vad jag tycker vi gör? Vi gör så här. Jag lyssnar på er. Så om jag får se lite åsikter i chatten så kan ni gärna punga ut om ni är sugna på lite Dead Island nu en stund eller om ni vill titta vidare på detta. Vi kan hoppa fram och tillbaka mellan dem för att se, liksom kolla in läget, hur det går under kvällen. Så låt mig veta hur ni tänker i chatten så låter jag majoriteten bestämma.
To craft sigils of our own, right? I think it's a 4-to-1 ratio. Is that right?
Yeah, just about. So you'll be able to get a lot of these different sigils by going through Nightmare Dungeons, completing Whispers, and through other content. And if you're finding sigils that you don't really want or don't really want to run, because maybe we're gonna have like enemies inside are gonna do additional lightning damage, but you don't have a lot of lightning resist on your build. Maybe you want to go ahead and like salvage that back at the occultist, take that down to its sigil dust, and use that to make.
Tack. Jo, förlåt. Jag sa att det låter som att chatten har talat och det låter som att chatten är överens. Och det är klart att ni ska få se på zombieslakten som ni önskar. Så om ni bara ger mig en liten stund så kommer den snart komma upp här på skärmen. Hoppas jag. Sådär. Det verkar som vi har lite tekniska problem. Men jag löser dem i det fördolda här. Ni får ha tålamod. Kanske det kommer frysa till här. Kompilerade shaders, såklart. Vad skulle jag annars göra? Du förlorade i skjortan så länge och nu försvann till och med skjortan. Jag är ledsen. Det är kul att det är så många som uppskattar skjortkonsten som jag bjuder på här. Nu var det mörkt men ni hör min röst och det är ju ändå mysigt, eller hur? Ja, jag vet inte vad det är som spökar här. Men ska vi se här. Nu har vi snart en bild på mig igen i vart fall. Det som strular för de som undrar det är att fånga PlayStationet som jag ska spela på ikväll. Det är någonting där som inte stämmer som det ska. Ni får ge mig en kort stund så får ni lyssna vidare på Diablo-streamen så länge. Här kommer den igen.
Collect over the course of time. Usually they're like a little bit more difficult to find a direct like version of on items. So like this, for example, crackling energy damage. So there's that's a sorceress, so like a lightning spec sorceress ability or passive effectively, where she'll occasionally be crackling out damage to nearby targets. You can now boost that by finding this particular magic node, which kind of might eventually unlock other builds for you to kind of go and chase after. But then there are rare nodes, which is on the next slide. And here, okay, so there's some information here. Rare nodes have a pretty powerful effect right off the bat, but then on top of that, there's this bonus effect down below that you can sort of see, where on this one it is another 60% damage to elites if you reach a certain amount of dexterity for your character. So the point here is that, like, rare nodes on their own, which there's about 10 or more per board. Rare nodes are already pretty powerful generically. But then on top of that, if you were able to hit these thresholds for the stat requirements for these rare nodes, that is going to make them very, very potent for you indeed. And when you're looking at the board, these are some of the most critical things you'd be thinking about when you're plotting your path through each board. Which of course, there are a number of boards available for you at launch. And when you'll be able to rotate them, you'll have to choose how you want to progress through rare nodes, whether you want to engage with the legendary nodes or not. This is a really important thing. Yeah. One other bit about this, just because it's easy for me to forget about, is that when you're going from Paragon board to Paragon board, like in the first board, this might be the cost. But then when you're looking at the second board that you're progressing through, those requirements are actually going to go up. So it's not in your interest to go like run from board to board, just unlock as many of these as you can directly through that way. You need to spend a little bit of time into the board and pick the ones that you really want, because the next board that you unlock to get more rare nodes of different types, those will be a little more expensive to unlock those bonus effects.
The thing I think is really interesting about these is when the way that I look at the board, right? When I open a Paragon board, the first thing I do is go and look at the nearest rare nodes to me, to where I'm starting, right? And then I look at the requirements for those bonuses, and then I start looking at the normal nodes on the way. I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'm pretty close to the dexterity required here through my gear. Are there some dexterity nodes that I could hit on the way here that would take me over it? And how much do I care about that particular bonus? And then I'm comparing it to that.
Mina kära FZ-are, jag är ledsen, men det kommer till och med vara så här crazy. Jag vet att ni inte kan se mig just nu, och det kommer ni dock göra igen. Det är så här galet att jag kommer vara tvungen att stänga av streamen och starta den igen. Och så som det funkar på YouTube, lustigt nog, så måste man starta en ny stream. Det vill säga, ni kommer inte kunna använda samma länk för att titta på streamen. Det kommer komma upp en ny länk, det kommer börja en ny stream, Detta kommer ta max 1 minut skulle jag gissa. Jag är ledsen med den här buggen. Jag har provspelat det innan. Detta är någonting som ibland händer när man kör med PlayStation av någon konstig anledning. Jag kommer kasta upp en länk här nu i chatten direkt som ni kan använda. Och ja, jag kommer fixa till det här så fort jag kan. Tråkigt att det är så, men det är tyvärr ingenting som jag kan rå över själv. Men jag gör i vart fall det bästa jag kan åt saken. Och jag tackar er för ert tålamod. Så nu gör vi så och så. Här sitter jag i realtid och fixar till en länk för att kunna dela med er. Jag kommer kasta den i forumet också. Eller om det finns en vänlig själ får man till och med gärna hjälpa mig och dela den där. Så. Nu jädrar kör vi. Här är länken. Vi ses om en minut. Tack och förlåt.